Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back. Today we are submitting your application via eGrants. It's nice to see so many familiar names in the chat today. We're becoming besties, familiar with each other, but if you haven't already, please take the time to introduce yourself and let us know where you're calling in from in the chat box, making sure to send it to all panelists and attendees. While you do that, some housekeeping notes. All lines are on mute and we'll keep them on mute throughout the call, which means that if you have questions at any time, just let us know in the Q&A box. You guys are warmed up in the chat box, but that's how you'll let us know if you're having technical issues. Just go ahead and drop us a note there, making sure to send it to all panelists and attendees, and our lovely webinar facilitators will help you out. If you're having issues with audio, we do recommend having the system call you. And if you are having visual problems, just leave and come back and that should fix it. Lastly, we are recording this call. If you do not wish to be recorded, you can disconnect at any time. The recording and the slides will be made available on the RSVP competition page, nationalservice.gov/RSVP competition. I'll also just add a little note. I just started getting thunderstorms in Northern Virginia, so I apologize in advance for any technical issues that you might experience. If you have trouble hearing me, just let us know in the chat and I'll make sure that I get closer to the mic. All right, so welcome again, everyone. My name is Ann OT, and I'm the Senior Program Officer for Training and Knowledge Management here at Senior Corps at CNCS, the Corporation for National and Community Service. I'm joined by my two colleagues, Courtney Sutton and Debbie Truchon, who you'll see in the chat box and the Q&A box. I've got to give you my daily caveat about questions. So because this is a competitive process, there are a few questions that we won't be able to answer. If they are specific or require a lot of context and discussion, we can't address it here today, but make sure that you send it to the mail address that you see on the screen, 2021 RSVP@cns.gov. The other type of questions, we can't provide individual coaching, so we can't tell you what you should put on your application, but through these series, we are able to help you understand the rules and requirements and the tools that are available. And then it's up to you to put together your best application for the process. So today is the last webinar of our first cycle. I can't believe we've made it already here. If this is your first time joining us, have no fear. The recordings are on nationalservice.gov, and we're doing it again starting in August. So it's now time for us to learn a little bit about you all. I'm going to invite our webinar facilitator to post the first poll question. We're interested in knowing who here has received a federal grant before. All right. And it looks like the majority of you. It's awesome. Our next question, how well do you know Senior Corps? I'm brand new to all of this. I'm familiar with its work, but not a grantee, or you're a current grantee. All right.
I see where you lost and in audio. This is Courtney Sutton. I am the Program and Management Analyst with Senior Corps. And so I will jump in here to assist. Is everyone able to hear me? If you can just message that. Okay, awesome. So I see that you can hear me. If you can just give me 1 minute, I can pull up our PowerPoint and fill in until
Hi,
Ann
I'm
is
back.
able to.
Sorry about that.
Oh, okay.
This is going to be an interesting webinar. Sorry about that, everyone. Were we able to get the next question in about focus areas? Not yet. All right, let's go to that question. So what is your primary field of organization? Tina, so you're experiencing this random thunderstorm too. I mean, it's not random. I knew about it, but in my head, it wasn't going to happen until after work. Awesome. It looks like we're a pretty diverse group here, which is very typical of our Senior Corps grantees. We've got 2 more questions. So really quick, how did you all hear about us? All right. And then our last question, we just want to know if you've attended another webinar in this series. Awesome. So it looks like the majority of you have, which is great. So welcome back and thank you all so much for joining us and continuing to learn with us these past 2 weeks. To those of you who are new, again, we will be repeating this cycle come August. All right, here is our agenda for today. For our content today, we're going to go over some basic competition overview, but because the majority of you have been following along with us, I'll breeze through that pretty quickly. And then we will shift the focus of today's webinar to the electronic grants management system. All right, so for our overview, we are currently accepting applications now for the RSVP program for specific geographic service areas. It never hurts to be reminded of important dates, but applications are due by 5 p.m. Eastern Time on September 1st. And then to view what geographic service areas are available, you would look at a document called Appendix A. Appendix A, and essentially how our competition and the program works, is that certain geographic service areas are open for competition and they are tied to a specific amount of funding available and a specific number of unduplicated volunteers. Here is what you would look or here's what you would see if you looked at Appendix A. Again, you see for each opportunity, there's a specific funding amount, a specific number of unduplicated volunteers for a specific area affected or geographic service area. And then, you know, we've gotten a lot of questions in this series and through the 2021 RSVP mailbox that kind of flow with the 5 that you see on the screen. The notice of funding opportunity, which is kind of the blueprint and map of the competition, is a great place to start. And you would find the notice of funding opportunity on our website, nationalservice.gov/RSVP competition. It's right in the second section called Funding Opportunity and Application Instructions. In addition to the NOFO, the Notice of Funding Opportunity, there are a lot of resources that will be helpful to you as you create your applications. In particular, today we're focusing on the RSVP grant application instructions. There's also Appendix A that I've mentioned, Appendix B, which is our performance measure instructions, and then we've got the work plan development worksheets and our frequently asked questions that are updated periodically based on the questions that we get in from these webinars and the 2021 RSVP competition mailbox. Okay, so we've got our preliminaries out of the way. So now we will start off with some key tools and tips for using eGrants. eGrants, again, is our electronic grant system. It helps us being Senior Corps and CNCS, get information in a standardized way so that we can kind of aggregate things. It's a technology system, and like any technology system, you need a few tips to keep in mind when using it. So I know we have a lot of people who have been here with us throughout the course of the series, and I'd like to invite some of our more experienced learners in the chat box to share what kinds of tools and tips that I might have given out this week with the electronic grant system. Which ones have you all heard me say throughout the course of this webinar? We're not talking about specific screens, but what are your recommendations that you have as you've heard through this training process? And you can let us know in the chat box, sending it to all panelists and attendees. Submit early, don't wait to the last minute. Yes. Write your narrative in Word, do everything in Word first, then copy it into eGrants. It's clunky. I've said that a lot of times. I wonder if I listen back how many times I said clunky. Time is EST. Yep. Eastern Standard Time. And be patient. Save, 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 save. Yes. Awesome. So I've got essentially everything that you all have said here. Draft your application in a word processing program and copy and paste it into eGrants. I can't stress that enough. I can't stress that enough. eGrants is not a great composition tool. It's better for capturing and passing along information. We've also got, be prepared to submit your application well in advance of the application deadline. Something along the lines of that. I'm going to skip the 2 bullets in the middle here, but if you have any problems, use the National Service Hotline. And that really goes hand in hand with submitting well in advance. When do you guys think the National Service Hotline is its busiest? Or will be its busiest? 4:25 p.m. on September 1st. I don't want you to be on hold waiting for them to fix your issue 30 minutes before the deadline. So please try to get your applications in on time. The next one goes with the first one, using the work plan development worksheets for your work plans. And there is the 15-page limit. If possible, try to print your application from eGrants once you are done to make sure that it is within the page limit. When it comes to technical issues, the 2021 RSVP at cncs.gov email box is probably not the best place to go because the technical issues are about eGrants, and so you'll want to make sure that you contact the National Service Hotline, and you can get their contact information in both the Notice of Funding opportunity and the grant application instructions. All right. So now that we have those tips out of the way, let's enter eGrants. I would have loved to do a live demonstration, but as those of you who are familiar with eGrants knows, it is clunky and thunderstorm, so we've got screenshots. Let's pretend we're entering eGrants. This is the first screen that you would see when you try to enter eGrants. Make sure if you are new to CNCS that you create an account first if you haven't already. I'm not going to give you detailed instructions about how to do that. You can get that in the grant application instructions. But yes, you need an account before you can get to this stage. When we log in, we see this page. This is the system that we use to not only get new applications, but it's also the system that your grant will live in if awarded. You can come back and manage the grant in many different ways through this system. And it's also not unique to Senior Corps. This is the system for CNCS at large. So the AmeriCorps grants and programs are managed through this system as well. And once you get here, you will click on New. It's going to ask you to select a NOFA. I'm not going to get into the differences between NOFA and NOFO, but essentially it's the same thing. And you will follow this drop-down menu and eventually look for FY 2021 RSVP competition. And it will take you to a screen that looks similar to this. If you look to the left column, this is an outline of everything that you need to submit. So on the left, you've got that outline of all of that information. Also, it's going to populate the information of the NOFO, and it will pull in the account you created. And so you want to make sure that you're selecting the right thing, 2021 FY21 RSVP competition. It's going to start with the narrative. And as you can see, the narrative section has a bunch of subsections here. Got another chat question for you. Can anyone tell me or share with us where we could learn about what needs to be placed in each subsection, where we could find information about what we're looking for in those different subsections? The NOFA. Yes, that is correct, the NOFO. I'd also add the grant applications instructions as well. Using those two in combination, the grant application instructions will tell you what to put there, and then the NOFA is going to tell you how we evaluate it. And you want to put that as you develop your application. So those are the two sections that or two tools, sorry. Those are the two tools that will be helpful for you in the narrative section. I will add that there isn't information about the other narrative or PNS amendment, but those are not relevant. So I won't talk about those now. So yes, the NOFO contains guidance and criteria. All right, so after the narratives, we come to the fun performance measure module. Some of you, many of you, most of you who have come to these webinars, we know now that the performance measures are an important part of the application where you tell us what you are going to do, project specific output and outcome targets, tell us how many unduplicated volunteers you're going to have. Excuse me. And you're also going to be involving each service activity to kind of give us the sense of scope of your work. As I've said before, it is very structured, more of a structured build than written. So we'll take some time to kind of look through this. I know we've gotten a lot of questions in the 2021 mailbox about finding performance measures. So hopefully we're able to kind of help you guys navigate through that. So the first thing I'll say, sorry. All right, here we go. So the first thing you're going to do is select your objectives and focus areas. So those of you who have attended an earlier webinar will remember that the focus area is the area where you must have some RSVP activities. So within each focus area, there are more specific objectives. So here we have economic opportunity, for example, where we see the different objectives within it. It's a waterfall menu, so when you click on one of the titles, that's how you will get access to the objectives. If you don't click on one of the titles, you won't have access to the objectives. One thing I will state right off the bat, as you are putting things on your work plan development worksheets and working through Appendix B, those performance measure instructions, when you get to this screen, any excuse me, any objective that you think that you are going to create a work plan for, immediately select those. It'll make things easier as you navigate to the next screen. You'll need to select a primary focus area. So I know we've talked about how it's possible for you to have multiple work plans that range and go through all of our available focus areas, but you do have to select a primary focus area. One thing about the primary focus area, it is not connected to any mathematical requirement. So if you're trying to figure out what you should do there, just select the one that you think best kind of represents your project. So after selecting objectives, you will get to this screen. What you will notice is that there's not anything on top, and that is because it's meant to summarize what you have built. So as you build out your work plans down here at the bottom where it says performance measures, you'll start to see the summary on top. One of the most common issues that we see at this stage is assuming that the size of the text box that you see on the screen, that size of the box where it says community need, is that size indicates how much information we want or need to make a decision. That is not the case. Understand what we need to be put in those fields by looking at the grant application instructions and the NOFO, which give you what a complete community needs definition is. And if you can get that in a sentence, go for it. If you need multiple paragraphs, go for it. Another thing I will note on this screen, again, you want to kind of develop your community needs beforehand and copy and paste them in. I think that's all I want to say here. Really quick, I saw a question in the chat. How did we get to the performance measure page? So from your application, when you log in and you've selected new application, you've selected the correct NOFO FY21 RSVP competition. On the left-hand side of the application are the different sections of the application. So it started off with the narratives. The next section that you would click on would be the performance measure module. So it's all a part of that column that was kind of the menu of application items. All right. So this is another screen kind of based on that first screen where you are choosing information that you have already provided. So from the objectives that you had originally selected, we identify our primary focus area on the screen. And then when we get to, so we identified our primary focus area on the previous screen. And then when we get to this screen and choose primary focus area, it will pull the objectives that are associated with that focus area. You can see how it's all connected. So because economic opportunity was our primary focus area, the objectives that are being shown now are those economic opportunity objectives. I want to pause here to kind of address some of the questions that I've seen in the 2021 mailbox. Appendix B lists all available performance measures, all available output outcome pairings that you are allowed to use as you develop these work plans. So if you get to this stage in the application in the performance measure module and you're not seeing something, that is in Appendix B. Another thing that you can do, where it says primary focus area, under category title, select that drop-down menu. There should be an other option. And from other, you should be able to select some of your other performance measures. Now, if you are an incumbent grantee and you have a legacy performance measure output or outcome, and that is no longer on Appendix B, you will not be able to select those. Okay, so what you put out in one stage of the process will filter through to the next screen. So what I've done here in this screenshot is jumped ahead at the screen to kind of simulate what it would look like after we have entered multiple work plans. So you would build them out individually in the screen before and then get here. And now it gets to the point where we can place our unduplicated volunteers. But what you'll notice is that it has kind of that gray screen. You're not able to put in numbers. And that is because at the top here, we need to say what our project's total number of unduplicated volunteers is. Once we've done that, then we'll be able to access these fields and kind of continue creating our work plans. So here I've put in 100 because that was easy, and we're able to address these fields. Got another chat question for you all. So when thinking about the output targets and the outcome targets, and I think we talked about this yesterday, how would you get your output and outcome targets? Where do these come from? Where do you figure out your output outcome targets? Anyone have any suggestions? Community partners, Kelly shared. That's a good one. Previous performance measures, that's a good one. Surveys. These are all good. So we started off with the best guess at what you can accomplish, the past experience. You can research stations, expectations. We're making a projection here. So you want to do the kind of research that's kind of indicated about what we think we will achieve in a given year. You will project that doing similar work, and you can build off that. Or if you've been working with your station and community partners or advisory board, you want to make an informed projection of how many actual people you will serve. In most cases, this is a people target, but we also talked about how there are some outputs that actually count, things like houses or miles. How many people, houses, or miles do you think will experience this change in their life as a result of the intervention? And that is what gives us our outcome target. And then after that, you get to kind of allocate your unduplicated volunteers. So in this case, we have 100, and we have 4 work plans. So maybe we could do it equally, 25, 25, 25, 25. And sorry, I'm checking to see if I want to say anything else about this. I guess I'll throw out another question. So when we're talking about unduplicated volunteers, we have on Appendix A the number of unduplicated volunteers that is required. And in this case, let's pretend if we were going to scroll down and there was another community priorities work plan waiting for us. What would be the smallest number that a program could put into other community priorities, assuming that they were receiving $75,000. So a program who has 100, okay, you guys beat me to it. So yes, 25. We've got our national performance measure requirement for RSVP that says for every $1,000 of federal funds you receive, one unduplicated volunteer must be programmed into a national performance measure work plan. So in the case of this applicant here, they would have to take their $75,000 divided by 1,075 and program those 75 unduplicated volunteers into these work plans here, because all 4 of these work plans result in national performance measure outputs and outcomes. And then the remaining 25 volunteers, they could either allocate again into these 4 work plans or add to other community priorities. Another thing that I will note about allocating volunteers, we discussed in an earlier webinar that there are certain times or that volunteers can serve in multiple ways, but they can only be counted as an unduplicated volunteer once. So if we had a volunteer who maybe was doing something in the financial literacy work plan and doing something in the K through 12 success work plan, but most of their time and was spent in the financial literacy program, we would count them only in the unduplicated volunteers total for the financial literacy program. And then because they are doing both financial literacy and K through 12 success, we can place them in both the total volunteers contributing column for both of these work plans. And I see a question, can all 100 volunteers be in measured areas? Yes, all 100 volunteers can be placed in a national performance measure work plan. It really depends on you. Just know that at a minimum, you must place 1 unduplicated volunteer for every $1,000 of annual funding in a national performance measure work plan. Okay. After we've done that, we've built our work plans and allocated our volunteers. And then the system is going to give us some summary and chart tables. These are for your information only, and they are helping you look at the information. They don't necessarily tie to any of our requirements. So when you click validate performance measure, the system will check to make sure that you completed all of the information needed to complete this. It's not going to check to see how many unduplicated volunteers that you programmed into national performance measures. It's not going to check to see how many unduplicated volunteers that you put in other community priorities and if that matches with the requirement. It's just going to check to make sure that the information is complete. I also know from experience in the past competitions that this is an area where there's some technical issues sometimes. So I'm going to say my famous do this early line again. So please make sure that you do this early to ensure that you can communicate with the National Service Hotline if you're having issues with validation. After you select validate performance measures at the bottom and then you get success, you can go back to the eGrants application on top. And the next item in our list of application items are the additional documents. So you see we've got this section for the required documents. And I want to note that this is like a checklist for you. You're going to send your documents to us via email, and there are instructions I'll share in a bit on the next screen in the notice of funding opportunity and the grant application instructions. But in the system, it doesn't automatically update. You have to manually let us know in the application that you have sent your documents, if applicable. So it's a checklist for you. And then here's a screenshot from the notice about these additional documents. And I wanted to highlight the OFMS, the Applicant Operational and Financial Management Survey. It is required for all new to CNCS applicants, regardless of the amount of funding that you are applying for. And it's required for incumbents who are requesting $75,000 or more. Some incumbents, some CNCS grantees, you might have completed the financial management survey, the FMS, in the past. The operational and financial management survey with an O is different. It's a different document, and the old FMS will not be accepted in its place. The form needs to be completed in full, a response for every question, and if there are additional comments needed to explain your response, you should use the preparer's comments section. And then the last important thing is that it needs to be submitted as a Word document. All other formats, including PDF, will not be accepted. So I'll just stress again, it's required for all new to CNCS applicants and incumbents who are requesting $75,000 or more. If you are an incumbent, so you're a current CNCS grantee, I know we have a lot of expansion opportunities in this round of competition. So if you are applying for an additional geographic service region, you are considered a new applicant for the purposes of the OFMS. But for your geographic service area, if you're reapplying for that current geographic service area, you do not need to submit this unless you are requesting over $75,000. All right, after required documents, you will get to the budget sections, and there are two budget sections, budget section 1 and budget section 2. A few things to point out: to enter in information, anything new, you will need to add a new budget item for some fields, and then for other fields, we've already got them pre-built in, and you just need to click edit to enter in your information. And then finally, we get to the station roster information. When you get to station rosters, to add a station roster, you will get a pop-up that looks similar to this. In the FAQs, if you don't know how to get there, they're on the nationalservice.gov/RSVP competition page, but in the FAQs, question 6.6 to be exact, it talks about who station rosters are required for. So if you are an incumbent applying for the same geographic service area, it is required that you add your station rosters to your application. If you are new to CNCS, new to the geographic service area, you are not required to submit your station roster at this time. You will be asked for them at a later time. And then we get to authorize and submit. So I mentioned at the beginning of the webinar that the authorized representative field is important. This needs to be completed by a person who is able to legally bind the organization to a contract. So the title of the person will vary organization to organization, but the key thing is that this individual needs to be someone who has the ability to bind the organization in a legal capacity. In many cases, it's probably not going to be the same person who is completing the application itself. You are going to have to create, as a representative, an account. I bring that up because I know for me, for documents that I am not able to sign, I don't have the authority to sign, I need to schedule some time on those individuals' calendars and let them know in advance and kind of walk them through certain things. So adding to my, again, do this in advance list. I will also mention the FAQs again. In section 4.2, talks about how to enter your authorized representative's name in the application. They have to sign in with their own account after creating an account, and then they will be able to authorize the application. And then we should be good to go. So that concludes our prepared content. We've got a couple of summary polls based on what we presented today, and then we'll open it up for Q&A. So I'll ask for our first poll question. You should submit your application at the application deadline, 5 p.m. Eastern Time on September 1st, well before the deadline, 5 p.m. Eastern Time on September 1st, or after the deadline, 5 p.m. Eastern Time on September 1st. And it is almost unanimous. Well before the deadline, 5 p.m. Eastern Time on September 1st is a best practice. All right, our next question, the tool that you can use to plan your work plans before entering them into eGrants is called a electronic grants management system, a budget, a calculator, or a work plan development worksheet. The tool that you can use to plan your work plans. All right. And those are the work plan development worksheets. They're great because you can just copy and paste into the performance measure module of the application. And then the last question we've got, if you have technical issues, and these are technical issues with eGrants, you should attempt to solve them on your own for as long as possible. Please don't do that. Move on to other parts of your application and return to this at the application deadline, or contact the National Service Hotline using the information provided in the NOFO. And it looks like we've got consensus. Contact the National Service Hotline. Please contact them. All right. So thank you for participating in our polls. We'll now open it up for questions, and I'll invite my colleagues, Courtney and Debbie, to join. I know we got some in the chat, so I'll just start with addressing that first one. So if we are a foster grandparent and senior companion program already, do we need the OFMS? So for the purposes of this competition, you do need the OFMS for a new grant. And then I see a question about the station roster. So for the station rosters, if you are new to CNCS, or let me phrase it this way, if you are new to the geographic service area for which you are applying for an RSVP grant for, you do not need to submit a station roster. You'll be asked for it at a later time. If you are an incumbent to that geographic service area and you're reapplying, you do need to submit a station roster. All right, Courtney and Debbie, any questions we can answer?
Actually, staying on the, thank you, staying with the station roster, if agency doesn't have a name for the station roster, would they still be able to submit that without a name?
When you say a name for the station, is it like a unique RSVP related name? Sorry,
I believe so, yeah. Part of the application where it has an asterisk of required. If you don't actually have one, would the application still go through?
So I'm going to say, at risk of telling you what to put on your application, what I will say is that if I was going to have Clearview Elementary School, my elementary school, as one of the stations under volunteer station name, I would put Clearview Elementary School. So hopefully that helps.
Okay. Maybe answer that one. Can you talk a little bit again on the OFMS requirements and where to find information on that?
Sure. So you can get OFMS information in the NOFO, and you can also, if you go to nationalservice.gov/RSVP competition, it links to the OFMS page where you'll be able to pull that document and start to fill it out. In terms of who needs to complete the OFMS, if you are new to CNCS, or new to this geographic service area, regardless of the amount of money that you are requesting. And if you are an incumbent grantee who is requesting $75,000 or more, you need to complete an OFMS form.
Okay. And just for clarity, that's the only form that needs to be submitted in a Word document.
Let me go back. I believe so. That's the only form where we explicitly say that it needs to be a Word document.
Correct. Mm-hmm. Okay. Do you mind just kind of explaining what a match letter is, or a match verification letter is?
Sorry, you cut off. A what verification letter?
Sorry.
It's okay.
You know, that storm.
Yeah.
A match verification letter.
So sure. So your organization needs to show how you are going to meet your match. So anywhere that you are getting additional funds from, your match verification letter would share where you're getting those funds from.
Okay. I have two systematic questions. While in eGrants, if you are working in it and you need to step away and then come back to it, are you able to save and come back?
Yes, there's a save button on each page. I recommend just clicking on it when you start and when you leave.
And then also, let's say you've been working on the application and you have decided to update or change your objectives or any of your focus areas. Are you able to go back and delete them?
Go back and delete them. So, okay, when you go into the performance measure module and you select objectives, that just kind of helps the drop down menu that you will have when you create your work plan. So let's say I select all the objectives for economic opportunity and all of the objectives for healthy futures, but then I end up only just creating 2 work plans that fall under healthy futures. You don't need to go back and we won't see on our end when we receive your application that you had selected an economic opportunity objective and didn't create a work plan. We only see the work plans that you created. Does that help to answer that question?
I believe so. And there was another type of question that had come in. Can, hypothetically, applications have been submitted and you've been awarded your grant. Volunteers that end up meeting other focus area goals or work plans, would you be able to report on those additional objectives, focus areas after award, or only the ones that were submitted in the application?
So your program, sorry, can you say that again?
Sure, sorry. Let's say you had submitted 2 primary focus goals,
Mm-hmm.
one for disaster and one for, I believe it's education. But down the road, going into the new grant year, volunteers were participating in another focus area that wasn't actually listed in your application that you were awarded for. Would you later be able to report on those new goals?
Yes, so after, if awarded, of course, there can be amendments made to an application, and you would work with your program officer or portfolio manager to make those changes later on.
I'm going to take a pause because my internet has gone out.
Courtney, are you seeing anything?
I'm sorry, I may have missed when you talked about this, but did you talk about how to check the page limit in eGrants yet?
I don't think that I've said it again, besides printing it out. Would you like to share another way?
Nope, I think that's the answer. So the question was, can you discuss how to check the 15 page limit in eGrants? And I think you said it. The answer to that question is to print your application out from eGrants. But Anne, can you speak to which pages in the application count towards that limit of 15 pages?
So it would be your narratives and your work plans. Am I missing anything?
No, I don't think so.
That doesn't mean that we don't review your budgets. We also review your budgets. Disclaimer. But it's not part of the 15-page limit. I saw a couple versions of this question. What happens if we don't get the number of volunteers that we or that you as an organization commit to? We've got a frequently asked question that's kind of similar to this. And, I've seen a lot of individuals asking also about, is it a 1-year target versus if it's a 3-year target? It is an annual target. So your work plans are developed with annual, not cumulative goals in mind. And you report on those achievements or outcomes at the end of each year. Well, actually, you have a report twice a year. However, you are not expected, or you will not be expected to reach annual targets until the end of the 3rd year.
One question about the OFMS survey. It says the request over 75K, and I think in our presentation we said at 75K. So can we just clarify if the OFMS needs to be completed if they are requesting $75,000 in grant funding?
Yes, we were told by the Office of Monitoring for incumbents who receive $75,000 or more, the OFMS needs to be completed.
Another question about station rosters. The grant application instructions say that if you are competing for competition, you don't need to submit a station roster. Can you speak to where it would tell incumbents that they need to include their station roster?
I believe it's in the NOFO, the Notice of Funding Opportunity. Hey, Courtney, can you explain the match verification?
I will do my best. So match verification is going to be your agency verifying to CNCS that you anticipate having the funds to meet the match requirement. So just from past experience in working with nonprofits, I know that sometimes we anticipate getting like grant funding, that we might use towards match. And so your match verification letter could be that document that says this is where our agency anticipates using the funds for the match of this grant. So it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to have the match funds in full when you're submitting your application. It just means that you, as your agency, has verified areas where they will anticipate receiving those funds. I just see one question in the box about an incumbent. My suggestion to incumbents that are resubmitting applications as a competitive package, I highly encourage you to submit the package as a new applicant and follow all of the instructions as they are written in the NOFA. Even if you are a current grantee, if there is something required of you in the NOFA, you should 100% look to provide all the information as if you did not already have a grant through CNCS or Senior Corps.
Thanks, Courtney. I've seen a couple more questions about the 15 pages and like asking about sizes, font sizes and stuff like that. There is an FAQ. I'm looking for the exact number. Give me one second. FAQ 4.10 talks about the estimated length of narratives for those questions that I've seen in the Q&A box. We're almost at time. So a couple more questions.
Just to, before we end here, just if we can speak really quickly to Appendix A, because I know there were a couple of questions in the Q&A about Appendix A. If you do not see the area that you're interested in serving on Appendix A, then it is not open for competitive applications at this time. So if you are not seeing an area that you're interested in on Appendix A, then it is not open for competition. Everything that we have available for competition is on Appendix A right now. So if you are looking for somewhere in particular and it's not there, then that would mean it is not open for a competitive application at this time.
Are there any other questions you think we can answer for the good of the group?
I think we got to as many of them as we could have touched on. There are some individual budget questions. I would, again, recommend that everyone review the NOFA and the grant application instructions together to be able to fill in your budget and section as best as you can. And also, if you have a question that we haven't gotten to or we weren't able to answer on the call today, please feel free to email us at RSVP, 2021 RSVP at cns.gov.
Yep. One last question that I'll answer. I saw, is there a place to review a successful application from last year? Yes. If you go to the National Service website and search for transparency posting, you will be able to see past applications. And thank you, Margaret. From the NOFO, it shows what is included in the 15 pages. The 424 face sheet, executive summary, program design, organizational capability, and cost effectiveness and budget adequacy narratives. Thank you for posting that. All right. I'm not seeing any other question that we haven't necessarily touched on. So seeing that we've kind of made it to the end, I want to thank you all for joining us for this ride. Most of you have been with us for the whole 2 weeks, so thank you for learning alongside of us. Thank you for asking really great questions to kind of help us inform our frequently asked questions, and for just being an all-around great group. I wish you the best of luck as you start to work on your applications. Again, if you've missed a call during this series, you are more than welcome to check the website for the recording. This week's recordings I'll have up by the end of the day Friday, and you are also more than welcome to come on board for cycle 2 come August. I saw a question for where you can find the recording, nationalservice.gov/RSVP competition. Thank you all so much again, and good luck. Have a great evening.